Dave, like we do every week, we're over here talking about rigs and techniques at the Jägermeister workbench, but we had a special guest. Why
Well,
don't
you know
introduce
how much I love to steal your money. I brought somebody who could do all the talking, and I can just stand here and feed a sentence and then listen to the knowledge, let it wash over me.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
That
He's
sounds
always
like
been
an
good at that.
outdoor writer's.
That's what I do. That's what I do.
Yeah, we do it, and he writes about it.
Exactly.
Will you introduce him for gosh?
Glenn Cameron from Fort Pierce, Florida, Floridian fame. He's probably one of the best sail fishermen that there is. And he's also...
That goes grouper fishing.
Well,
and he's also...
That explains why we brought him in for a grouper
And he's
show.
also really good at grouper fishing.
Wow.
No, I mean, you know, he's good at what he does.
All right,
he does
well,
it all.
let's get into it before we run out of time.
All right, well, first off, you know, how do you come upon a spot? We're going to talk about anchor fishing because I figured most of our fellows would probably like to anchor on
I would think most of the people would anchor. And you got to remember when you're grouper fishing, the groupers are related to structure. So I would typically go to the piece of structure and ride around and look at the structure with my bottom machine and try to figure out where the fish are in relation to that structure. Once you figure out where these fish are in relation to the structure, you try to anchor up current of it to where your baits reach the fish. So if you're marking the fish, your baits may or may not even be reaching those fish. So you want to try to think about where your line's going in relation to your boat and anchor ahead of those fish. So that your line actually reaches them. Because a lot of times if you're marking the fish right below you and your lines are behind the boat, your lines are behind the fish.
And you got to be pretty close to the spot.
You need to be your baits need to be close to the spot. You don't necessarily want your boat right over the spot, but you want your baits in the spot so you can pull them away from the spot.
And most of the fish are going to be up current of the spot?
They're going to be facing into the current typically ahead of the structure.
All right, so once we locate where we want to be, we get the boat set up, then what are we going to do?
What's the first thing that goes over?
I drop over 2 great big baits to start with. See what's down there. Let's feel around, see what's got. So I typically drop 2 of my biggest baits.
A certain rig that you want to use?
In the shallow water, I will use the egg sinker sliding rig.
Okay.
Right, with an arm length of 80 to 120-pound fluorocarbon.
Yep, that's diamond.
Right.
Let's talk about the hook. Is the hook important?
The hook is very important. I use an offset beaked hook. I'm in the Fort Pierce area, so where we fish, we were allowed to use a J hook. Above Sebastian, you have to use a circle hook.
Okay.
So where I'm fishing, I use this J hook, which is a mustad offset beaked hook.
Now you said something to me that I had never thought of before. You change the size of the hook, the gap of the hook,
based on the size of my bait.
Well, tell people at home why that is.
Well, you don't want a really small hook with a really wide body bait. So if you get a larger pinfish, you want a hook that's relative to the size of that bait. You don't want to use a 4-0 hook with a big wide body bait where you might want to go to a number 7 or number 8 hook.
The bait actually gets in the way
right.
of the
they
hook
can't,
finding its spot.
There's not enough space.
Right.
For them, when they bite down,
so
they don't move
if you're using a smaller white bait, I'll go to a 4, 5, or 6. But when you start using like a blue runner, your average size blue runners, I'll use a 7 or an 8 or maybe even a 9 if you're using a great big bait. So you really want to gauge your hook to the size of your bait.
All right, so I see another rig here. What do you typically use
this
for?
Is my deep water rig, and I use the tri-swivel.
Got it.
A tri-swivel. And then I attach my lead below that, and I use a loop knot.
Okay, well, let's show the camera right here. It's real important so everybody sees.
And I use a loop knot so that I can remove and change my leads at will based on the currents.
I got it.
So a lot of times you'll drop down and you won't have enough lead, and so rather than having to retie, you just make this loop knot, and you can add lead at will. And this line, your main leader line is going to be directly related to the amount of current. The more the current, the longer the leader.
Because that allows you to just stretch out and get further away from your gear when the current pulls your bait back.
And as to where if there's not a lot of current and you have a long leader, you can't feel the bite.
All right, now you got 20 seconds to tell me what other real critical things that guys at home need to remember.
They need to be on the spot. The most critical thing of all of it is taking your time with your anchor and really getting on your spot. That is the single most important part about grouper fishing. You got to be on that spot to get the bite to start with.
Now we got 2 photos.
Yes,
is
you
that
do.
Correct?
This is from a couple of days ago.
Okay, you got a photo of
This was in
you?
this was in 75 foot of water.
All right, and then who's the female angler?
This is Whitney. She is a real estate broker in New York City that came to visit.
Couple great fish, but Glenn, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming,
Thank you for
sharing
having
some of
us.
these great
Dave,
grouper
always good to
techniques.
see you. Good to see you.
Hey, and if you want to go fishing with him, go to Floridian.